Well, hello, church. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jennifer, and this is our beautiful pastor's wife, Irina, Onishchenko. And yes, our special guest today. So just last year, Irina actually published her first book, a very precious book, and it's titled Joanna, a Gift from God. For those of you that are not familiar with the situation that happened, the Onishchenko family experienced a deep tragedy where their 10-month-old daughter, Joanna, passed away and is with the Lord. As I read through the book, I couldn't help but notice how genuine you were and open-hearted you were to share such a difficult time in your life, and just you laid your heart open for us to read and see inside. I would like to read a fragment from the book that really stood out to me, and I actually did not really understand it and couldn't grasp it. So Irina wrote, "Now Joanna's life is over. I can truly say this is one of the best things to ever happen in my life. I would not want it any different. It was accomplished with great joy, and my heart praises the Lord for everything He has done in our life. Joanna was my perfect gift from God, and out of my sincere love towards God, I choose to give her back to Him." Being a parent myself and having children of my own, I totally understand that as a very hard thing to say. It doesn't come natural from us to say something like that, and I knew that you had something different in your heart, and that is why I was so excited to be able to interview the author herself and to get like a deeper view of your heart, what you had inside, and of course your walk with God through everything.
Thank you, Jenny. It is an honor to hear that, and one of my favorite things is to actually hear the things that God does in people's hearts after they read the book about our baby's life. And I do want to say, before we even talk about anything else, my big gratitude to God, because after I lost my baby, I was so broken. Like, doing something that would take so much time and effort was even hard to think about. It was beyond, my thoughts, and God truly helped me to accomplish it. So all my credits go to Him, and it's amazing. I'm amazed myself looking back that I was able to do that.
Yeah, and we also thank you. Like, for those that did get a chance to read the book, we're very thankful for the blessing. Like, I know it wasn't an easy task to do and a very difficult topic to lay out, but we're very thankful for that. So I'd like to jump right in and ask the first question, and that will be about the title of your book. You titled it Joanna, a Gift from God. And I do know that you put a lot of time and effort into thinking of the name of the book and what to do with it. So how did you come up with the name?
I did have a different name initially. It was Down syndrome is beautiful, but as I was writing the book, in the middle of the book, I just wrote on the top, Joanna, a gift from God. And it actually means, Joanna's name means God is gracious, or a gift or grace of the Lord. And she lived up to that. When we found out we were having twins, our children, oldest children, were like, we need to be part of naming the babies because you guys always do it. So we're like, sure, that's fine. Our oldest daughter proposed Levi and Joanna. And Levi was one of my options for boys, so I agreed with right away. But Joanna, I had to think about it. And when I found out the meaning of her name, I knew it was the perfect name for her. There's a chapter in the book. It's called The Night in My Closet. It was one of the hardest days of my life. There's been a few, but that's one of them. It was the day we found out, we went to the specialist with my husband and found out that she is going to need a surgery as soon as she's born, and that there's a chance that she might have Down syndrome. And that night was a really hard evening. I couldn't sleep. I was in my closet. I was crying, praying, trying to find some answers. And as I'm going through this battle, I envisioned that God is holding a gift for me. He's ready to give it to me. And I'm feeling a little hesitant, like, God, are you sure this is a good gift for me? I'm not certain, that I want to receive this gift. And as I was writing the book, my thoughts were taken back to this time when I was in my closet and I was feeling hesitant. And I felt a little bit ashamed because just after writing the book, I was able to go through her whole life, and I realized that was one of the most amazing gifts God gave me. Just from that 1 year of life, I learned so much, probably more than my entire life. I think that's why God led me to put it into writing all those, beautiful things that I treasure in my heart that he taught me through all the pain and joy that I went through.
Wow, that's really beautiful. I mean, the name itself means gift from God, and I feel like that is not a coincidence. Like, I'm sure that God orchestrated that. Like, it just feels right, like, even though when she was born and when you were like pregnant with her, you didn't know like that she's only going to have 10 months of life, right? You couldn't possibly known that. And the whole life that she has lived, the 10 months, and the gift that she did bring to you and the surrounding people, I mean, that name is just so perfect for her. Like, you can't say that that wasn't God, like, inspiring you with that name. So also going a little deeper about what you said about the night in your closet, I believe that was chapter 2 in your book, and you described that as like the real battle began, right? And can you talk more and tell us a little bit about how your heart started to heal in the midst of such a spiritual battle, and how God began to heal your heart there?
So I think anybody could go through something so painful and come out victorious only because of God, and He's the one that gives us this supernatural, it's a heavenly peace. It surpasses all understanding, so we can't even comprehend it with our mind because it doesn't make sense to have peace in such time. But that's the peace that God gives us. And just one example that I actually did not share in the book. When I was writing the book, I felt like it was very personal, too personal to write about, but I think I'm ready to share it. Going back to that night in my closet, I remember it was a pretty long night, but I remember just praying. I laid my hands on my stomach and I prayed over Joanna. I said, God, I know you could heal her before she's even born. And as I was praying those thoughts, as I was praying that prayer, this thought came to me that there's a chance that she might not live. And I was like so desperate, like I started having this plea to God, like, God, no, please have her live, like 3 months, 6 months, just throwing out like numbers as if trying to grasp into something. And after she was born, there was about 5 times that she could have died in her 10 months of life. When she was born, she was rescued through emergency C-section. That was because of the cord wrapped around her neck. And then she was only 12 hours when she had her first surgery. And then at 8 months, she had another surgery. It was the serious open heart surgery that she had. 5 weeks into her recovery, she got sick, and she did well. She recovered from it. But a month later, when she got sick again, she got sick, and the next morning never woke up. So the pain of the grief journey is the most painful thing. And I remember 6 months later, I still felt so much pain inside. And I went to a friend's house. We had a prayer. And I remember at the end, we're praying for each other. And I asked the girls to pray for me. And I was saying, tomorrow is 6 months. And my heart was so heavy, I couldn't speak. I was speechless. My sister was there. She kind of understood that I was saying that tomorrow is 6 months since my baby died. The girls prayed over me. I was kind of scared to even face the day. I mean, it's kind of those, certain days they stand out more. They're such big reminders. But the next day, I woke up. It was such a beautiful, sunny October morning. My husband and I went to the cemetery, brought some flowers for our baby, and then we went out for breakfast with a couple from church, ministry-wise. And then it was a Sunday, so we went to church later on in the afternoon. And that day, my husband was speaking a sermon. It was a communion as well, but the sermon was, God can give you more than you ask for or imagine. And while he was getting ready for the sermon, he asked me if there was something that God gave me that was more than I asked for. And I was confident to say that it was Joanna's life. I knew that, but then as I'm standing there during that communion, I'm like in pain, I'm crying, and God takes me back to that time in the closet where I was literally pleading for her life. And then he also reminds me that initially she was supposed to have a surgery at 4 months. It was scheduled to be in September. But God put it in our hearts to ask the doctors to delay the surgery. So, all those numbers made sense in my head. Like, if she had the surgery in September and died 2 months later, like she did, she would have lived for 6 months. So, at that moment, God just I kind of knew all that information, but it was just kind of revealed to me once again that, I was kind of pleading for a certain amount, but God gave me so much more. And at that point, I just, my tears of pain turned to like tears of joy, thanking God for the 10 months that we had with her versus the 6 months that was of pain of not having her anymore.
Wow, I feel like that's such an important concept even for all of us to take back, kind of like a little golden nugget that we can put into like any difficult situation in life. Like you said, not to dwell on the bad and the negative, but instead to thank God for what we did have, and even if it was lost, but not dwell on that, but dwell on and be thankful for what is good, and be hopeful for the future that God does unfold for us. And going on, when the book was finally published and out there for the public to dive right into, I wanted to ask, what was the main purpose that you wanted people to take back into their lives? What did you want them to understand?
So I knew that the book was going to be like this story to honor our daughter for the family, friends, and just people who would like to read it. But as I was writing it, I was also praying for God to give me wisdom to write what he wants to say through the book. And I actually learned after I finished the book what it was, and it was that God is good no matter what happens in our life. We can't look at God and perceive him through the challenges or the circumstances in our life. If everything is good, God is good. If something's bad in our life, God is not good anymore. He's always a good God, and he's there with us in our pain. He's the one that carries us through it. We can't do it on our own.
I feel like that applies so much to so much more variety of situations in life. So if you can give an advice for someone who is going through a hard time right now, maybe it's not a loss of a loved one, but maybe something else that's very challenging, like a dark valley that they need to go through, what advice would you give them?
Well, I would definitely say to run to God, because sometimes things that happen in life are so difficult and so painful, we could even get upset with God or angry with God, and that's the opposite of running to God, because you're running from God. In Psalms, it says that God is close to the brokenhearted. So at that point, it's our option to either stay close to him or turn away from him. I know that even in this room right now, there's there's people that might have various type of pain right now. And it doesn't have to be like a one-time test in your life that you have something and you either fail or not. It's things that we go challenges through all the time in life. Like for me, I had, since Gianna passed away, I had another surgery because of some complications I had due to the emergency C-section. And even right now, parenting, I was sharing with you earlier, it's just parenting 2 toddler boys is a huge challenge. I have 8 kids, right? And this is not something I was faced with before. They're really close in age and they constantly fight. But even the 4-year-old, you would think he would be older enough to be past that stage, but sometimes he would just have this aggression where he gets really angry, and sometimes even violent. He would not be able to control himself. I wouldn't be able to control him. And those moments would get so hard, I'm like, God, I can't do this. It would kind of almost devastate me. And actually, a few weeks ago, I think God gives me these revelations in church for some reason, but I was sitting and God reminded me that 2 years before Jason was born, I was reading about King Josiah, that he loved God with all his heart, mind, and soul. And that was when God created this prayer in my heart that the next child we're going to have, which was over 2 years later, that was my prayer for him, for him to love God with all his heart, mind, and strength. And God reminded me that I have a great plan for this child, and that I wouldn't feel like I'm overcome by some evil or I'm losing here, but to trust God, and that faith kind of gets rid of that fear. And you learn to trust God, and you see that he's doing something good out of it. He gave me more opportunities to talk to Jason more, just to teach him to pray about the way he behaves, and that only God can help him. He can't rely on himself. He can only rely on God. I think that's something that God wants to teach him at such an early age that he could use later on in his life. And God is going to do some great things out of his life.
Thanks for sharing that. And I know sometimes telling people to trust God, especially when they're going down the very, very deep valleys, it's easier said than done. And I'm sure you know that firsthand when you had to go through your loss. And that definitely ties in I understand more the passage that I read, and that you were able to say that God, I give her right back to you. Of course, only with God. And when you run to him, it becomes so much easier. And thanks for sharing that. So what advice, though, would you give to people that are around the people that are hurting? So, for example, like a loving friend or a family member who sees that someone is going through a difficult time. Like, what practical advice can they do to be encouraging and supportive? I'm sure lots of people are, like, genuinely want to help, but they don't know, like, am I being supportive or am I being, like, annoying? Like, I just want to ask, like, what was practical for you that people done that were helpful and, like, encouraged you during this time?
I actually have a whole chapter that says the best support in time of grieving that was helpful to us. There's a lot of detailed things. I'll probably just mention a couple. Like, especially early on, I would go to the cemetery a lot, and I would come and I would see that you were there before me, and you brought flowers and a card. And just reading that card, you just feel so loved by God. As if God is telling you, "I love you. I see you." There's a lot of moments like that. I'm not going to go through too many, but just even past summer when I had my surgery again, I remember being in bed for a week, and I was starting to feel depressed just being in bed, not being able to do much. And Julie, Leo's wife, texted me. She's like, "Can I come over?" And I was kind of like, well, I wasn't really up to even seeing anybody. I was like, sure. And she came over, and she brought like some things for kids to play with, some fruits, a pretty big gift card. I know it's really big for their family, but after she left, I remember crying, and it's kind of like God telling you, "I see you, I care for you." It's just those moments I think those are the moments, for me, that's the best thing in life, is to feel God's love for you and His presence. And He knows there's certain times you need that more than other times. But I think the most amazing thing is that God uses us people to do that. Like, He uses us, each other, to show His love.
I actually really believe in that. I really believe that, like, the little acts of kindness that people do, and the feelings that you get, like, oh, I want to do something kind to someone, like that's also not natural for the human person to just think of, right? We're usually very selfish. But those acts of kindness are inspired by God, and how it says in the Bible that, like, we are the body of Christ, and if you heed to His voice and His calling, and you have these feelings, like, don't think that, oh, that's just me thinking to do something kind, but understand that that is actually God using you to show His love, either through your hands by doing something like Julie did. She came and gave gifts to your kids and, like, food, or through, like, words of encouragement, like even a simple text message. It doesn't have to be like something very extravagant or very, like, expensive. And that actually reminds me, do you remember on our small group, we had that project to do where we would text a couple of girls a very detailed message of why we're thankful for them, and just to be very, very specific and bring up examples. Like, do you remember that? Can you share a little bit about it?
I remember I started off with 3 girls, and then I can't remember, it was at least 5, maybe up to 10 girls. I got so excited about doing that text messaging, and it was the response I got from some girls they really needed at that time. One of them, I don't remember, she found out some bad news from the doctor, and she's like, it was such a hard week. You literally feel like it was such an encouragement to them. And I do want to mention something about the small groups as well. That was another very helpful time for me during the time of pain that we were going through. The ladies' small group that you were hosting one time, I was at my house, and I remember everybody came, and it was, I don't remember how much later after Joanna's passing, but I was telling the girls that if you weren't here, I would have been at the cemetery crying, because that's how I felt. But I remember just all the ladies were sitting there, and most of our Bible study turned out to be like just me sharing my heart, and everybody was just so kind and listening and so caring. And even the night before she passed away, I remember, I don't know why I didn't text anybody from family, not even individual friends, but I was led to text it to our girls from our small group to pray for her. And for some reason, when you get together weekly and you share what's on your heart, because we would pray for each other, right? We would, like, specifically pray for one girl, would pray for the other throughout the week. But when you know that somebody's there with you, just in your life, and praying for you and living that pain with you, it blesses you in so many ways that you can't even imagine. You have this intimate friendship, and it's on a church level, friend level, and it's a very big blessing.
Yeah, I do remember that. That was a wonderful time we had. Well, Irina, I wanted to thank you so much for being so open and sharing with us your story and going a little deeper than the book even had. For the rest of us, Irina will have books up in the back at the end of church for you guys to pick up, maybe for yourself or for a friend who needs it. I mean, I'm sure it will be a blessing to all. And Irina, I'm sure you'll be more than happy to sign and personalize them a little bit for us.
Yeah, I do have them signed.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So thank you again, and may God bless you, Irina.